Welcome everyone to Breaking into Tech. We are trying to overcome all the tech issues that keep facing us as we're trying to figure out how to get this interview to go live, but we're going to make it work even if the internet doesn't want to cooperate and my printer doesn't want to work. But we're here now. I'm so glad to have you back, Nancy, to not only talk a little bit about the work you do at Sabio, but some tips that you can give to people who are on the job hunt. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amanda, for having me. It's good to be back, and I'm glad to be on the show today to share some advice and some tips for you guys.
So, some people who saw your last episode know a little bit about you, but not everybody watching knows who you are or a little bit about you. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and then a little bit about the work that you do at Sabio?
Yeah, so my name is Nancy again, and I am actually a technical recruiter and career service coach working in the career service team at Sabio. And my main role is really to support our alumni community as they are graduating Sabio so that they can be successful in landing a job. A fun fact is within this last year, I helped supported 150 plus alumni and transitioning from outside of the boot camp to landing a job in the field. So that's a really exciting fun fact to just share back that our services definitely helps to keep our alumni motivated and ultimately landing them success in the field. So
Yeah, and someone in the comments already said that you are the best in the East. So, you're getting a shout out already. And that's just amazing to hear, like, 150 students. I love when you can quantify your work with numbers and, like, each person, sometimes numbers can be, like, not exciting, but then when you think 150 different people's lives changed and then how many
yes.
people are related to them through their family and how many of their lives are changed, and it's really exciting to hear about how you're making an impact. So that's really cool.
Yes, thank
So,
you. That's what I love about my job. So
yeah, that sounds really great. I've really enjoyed this series talking to different people who work at Sabio because you all have such a passion for the students that you get to work with, either in the joining process or, in the process of going through the program and then the career services. And you all just talk about how much passion you have to help change people's lives. So it's been really cool to hear that resounding theme in each of these interviews. So that's really cool.
thank you.
So let's start with what people would want to know because we know the job market is shifting. Many companies are announcing layoffs. AI is in the mix, and we want to provide people with some tips and tools that can help them land their next job. So, let's talk about the top 3 things people have to be doing during their tech job hunt. So, can you share with me? Let's start with what's the first thing you would say is the top thing they should be doing?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would recommend, and this is something that we help our fellows throughout their whole cohort and even after they graduate, is know your marketing tools. Okay, you got to know how you're going to market yourself. And the two top marketing tools that you have is your resume and your LinkedIn. And so if you don't have a LinkedIn, of course you probably do because you're watching this live, but if you don't have a LinkedIn, you should definitely make sure you have a LinkedIn, make sure you have a resume. Those are the two most important things that you need to be able to have updated so that you can get ready for the job market search.
And don't you guys have like specific tools? Because I've done enough interviews with graduates on their LinkedIn and I can see like a common theme of like what each LinkedIn profile has. And so, like, even someone told me that you guys said, oh, take that off because it's not related to the tech industry and it kind of looks funky. So, I think sometimes people throw their LinkedIn profiles together and they're like, well, I did this job and this job and this job. And you guys have a very like focused, don't distract people with all these other things you've done. Stay focused on what you've done. So, what exactly should people be doing with both either their resume or their LinkedIn resume? and how do those two different? That's like three questions. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Those are great questions. So, at Sabio, we have something called like a Sabio LinkedIn success checklist. We also have one for resumes. We have like a checklist for that. And really, it's just to set them up for success, to be job search ready, to be job interviewing ready. And one of the things about LinkedIn is that we tell our fellows that it's important to highlight any experiences that you have with tech, even from the most basic, from just using Microsoft Suite to the advanced skills of what they've learned at Sabio, the different tech stack that they have. Um, any of those experiences in any of their previous roles, we do want to highlight that. We also want to highlight their leadership skills. In any role that you're in, if you really think about it, there are some type of leadership responsibility that you have to be able to do in order to be successful in your roles, right? And so we like to work with our fellows to discuss whether or not the roles that they were in previous has anything to do or related to any leadership types of roles. And then the last thing, which I do love and appreciate very much, is our veterans out there. We serve a lot of our veterans in our Sabio community. And so if you are a veteran and you have military experience, believe it or not, you have a lot of transferable skills to the civilian life, the professional world here. And therefore, it should definitely be on your resume. And we do work alongside every fellow to look at their bullet points and really kind of talk to them about how does that responsibility, or what did they did do in their last role in the military, how did that relate, or what kinds of transferable skills. Believe it or not, a lot of our veterans actually have project management skills that they don't even know. That's a huge thing to have, because in the world we live in tech, project managers are huge. They are needed. So, that just having those transferable skills with your military experience is also something that we look for in the LinkedIn. And then, can you share again what was the other questions? I'm sorry.
It's okay. So LinkedIn resume and a resume, like a written out resume that you're gonna send to an employer, like those are different. They're not like you don't copy one and put one in the other. So like what are the big changes between a LinkedIn resume and a resume?
Yeah, so with our LinkedIn profile, I like to say, I like to tell my fellows, this is your like your virtual portfolio, right? This is where they see you kind of more as a whole. There's a lot more you can add on features, you can post, you can add headline skills. You have a section where you can add, all the skills that you believe you have. You can add more of the experiences, maybe if you have awards and things like that from the military, those are places that you can put on there, other accomplishments. When you're talking about the resume, though, it's very specific to what you're trying to get into. So when it comes to the resume, maybe certain roles or certain things like accomplishments, like a medal or things like that, may not be able to fit on that resume, because in general, when you're sending out resumes, your resume should be no more than 1 to 2 pages. Anything past the 2 pages, it's most likely, and if it's, especially if it's important information that's on your third page, it might not be seen. So in that sense, we help you to tailor your resume to help you so that you can stand out when you're, sending your resumes out there, but that you're listing the most important thing. It's more of a summary of your best self, of your strengths, that relates to the role that you are applying for, versus the LinkedIn where it talks about everything about you, really, because it's your portfolio of your professional experiences as a whole. And that's what's really great about it too, is because once a recruiter gets your resume and they look at your skills, they say, wow, that's great. I want to learn some more about this person. And then they click on your LinkedIn and they see that, wow, you besides that, you volunteer for this or that, you speak this other language, you have another degree, you have medals in your as a veteran, right? And so those are just all, it makes you as a whole a really well-rounded professional, and definitely will make you stand out, especially if they themselves, maybe perhaps they were a military veteran as well, and when they see that you have a meadow and maybe they have the same, that will prompt them to want to reach out to you to connect with you further as well. So those are just the differences. I would say is most important is, one is more concise and more, you're targeting specifically for the role that you're trying to get into, where you're highlighting your best skills. The other one is more so like everything else that you would like to talk about or showcase as your strengths, your accomplishments, and things like that.
Yeah, I think this interview shows like how valuable the resources after graduation are, because when I left the military, there was a 1 week class on like how to, you know, and it wasn't nearly as informational as this. Like, we were only 10 minutes in, and I'm like, wow, if I had known this when I was leaving the military. So the fact that you're able to help people, even if they're not military, if they're, we call you civilians, but if you're
Mhm.
going into this new role into the tech industry and you don't like have all these resources on how to find a job, it makes it really hard. And so you guys just have so much to offer, not only to get you trained to be a software engineer, but also to get that role as a software engineer. So it's just so great. So that was the first tip. So we're going to move on to the second one. So what's the second most important thing people have to do when they're on the job hunt?
Yes, so this is a very important one. You need to continue to hone in on your skills. And when I talk about that, it's not just your technical skills. So if you are trying to be a software developer, you know that you are going to be a lifelong learner because technology does not just stop, it continues to advance, right? So you need to continue coding. So you need to find your own personal projects, or in our case, with our Sabio community, we have a lot of alumni that are working on projects and they ask, hey, anybody want to hop on and help support me in my project? And that way they're working together and coding together. So they're sharpening their skills as they are job searching. The other thing is interviewing skills. We are not born being able to interview excellent, having those skills. I mean, some people are, but most of us in general, we don't just wake up and know how to interview. So being able to go through, not expecting that your first interview is going to be that job, but knowing that it's going to be a few different kinds of interviews that you're going to get, before you really understand what kinds of questions are going to be asked and what is the feedback on the way you answer, right? How do you answer that question? And if you're not sure, the best way to do it is to dive right in. Try your best to answer those questions when you go into a recruiter call. And after that, they will always ask you, do you have any questions for me? You can always ask for follow up, like, how did I do on this interview today, right? What can I do? What else can I do to stand out? And they, more than likely, most people are willing to share some feedback to let based on our conversation today, maybe if you would have shared a little bit more about this versus that, I would have, maybe that would have made you stand out a little more as a candidate. So all in all, you need to have practice interviewing, and it's going to be more than just one interview. I mean, some people are naturally born to do well, and they just interview once and they do get the job, which is amazing for them. But most of us, it takes a few interviews before we understand what kinds of interview questions are there and how to answer it, where you're highlighting your best skills, where you're able to talk about yourself, market and sell yourself to who you're interviewing with. And so that would be my number two, is continue honing on your skills in tech and also in regards to interviewing.
I love that, and that resonated in the comments. She said, or she or he, I guess, said, yes, asking for feedback is really wonderful during the interview, because that is true. I think sometimes people think that they can't ask questions when they're being interviewed
Mm-hmm.
because they're the one being interviewed. But usually at the end, they'll be like, do you have any questions for us? And you can
Yep.
say, yes, I do have some questions. And they can be about the company, and they can also be like, what did I do well in this interview? What could I improve on? And that part of the interview process is something that a lot of people take as a missed opportunity because they don't ask questions. And I think sometimes employers want to hear your questions. They want to hear that you have questions about the company. They want to hear that you want to keep improving in your, so that's an opportunity to shine in the interview and get really good feedback. So
Yeah, yeah. I just want to add on to that. Like, I can't tell you enough how our alumni will come back and share their success story with me. And I will always ask them, like, well, how did you get to where you are? And they will always tell me, well, believe it or not, the this interview or this offer that I got, the reason why I got it was a lot of the questions that I got in this interview were questions that were asked before in other interviews where I didn't do well, right? And they were like, but what I did was after those interviews that didn't go well, I went back, I learned about it, I researched about it, I knew how to answer it correctly the next time, and lo and behold, they asked it again in a different interview in a different company, and they got the job. And so it's all about making sure that you are, being reflective of your interviews when you're doing that, so that you can practice that and get better at it. And it really, it's going to come out like really great, just like all these amazing stories that I've been hearing from our alumni community.
yeah, and in the comments, someone asked, "What do you think about the STAR method?" And I did an interview when I first started the podcast, which was like, and now I'm like, "What's STAR mean?" But I remember walking away from that interview and thinking that acronym really was helpful in helping people get focused. So I think it's a great tool. Are you googling it smartly so that you can look it up
Yeah.
real quick?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I
No,
want
that's
to
fine.
kind of like go through that too. Um, yeah, so Yeah, so, one thing with the STAR method is I think like for me, when I work with alumni, I'm always working with, I like to, talk about their elevator pitch. And so you can really utilize the STAR method in your elevator pitch as well as all the behavioral questions that you are getting. I think it's a great resource that you should implement. I also recommend that, as you're thinking about these stories or how to word yourself in these interviews, that you also write it down. For me, I have a better processing of my thoughts and how to share and talk about things when I write things out. And I always encourage this writing exercise for all my alumni, that when you write these out, you will start to remember the flow of how you want to talk about it. And if you want to use the STAR method to help you with your flow, that's going to really help you to be successful. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I whenever I do like presentations, I always write down what I'm going to say, and I never say exactly the same thing, but getting it all out there helps me to remember the cues and the focus of like each slide or each, note on my note card so that I know what to say. And that writing out process, it seems like, well, you don't say the same thing, but it really just helps to get everything straight
Mhm.
in my
Yeah.
brain, and it is really helpful for me.
Yes,
So,
agreed.
we have time for one last tip. So, what's the last thing you would say, or the third most important, even though this may be the most important thing, um, when you're looking
Yeah,
for
this should
that?
be number 1 now that I
Yeah,
think about it. This should be number 1, but I think, we'll keep it as number 3, so the top 3.
yeah,
This is something that whenever I go into my so in at Sabio, we always bring back and highlight alumni that has had success, who wants to come back and share. And it's just a moment for them to have the spotlight to just be like, hey, and share it back to our community, our fellows who are still going through the program, who may be feeling struggles, having some highs and lows in the program where they're like, can I really do this? Having imposter syndrome, like, I'm not good enough, right? So we bring them back to share their story, like how did they do it? And one thing that a lot of people always say is remember your why. And I think that this is so important because I will tell you that working with our alumni community, there are more rejections than there will be offer letters out there, right? You're going to get 100 rejections or more, probably more, before you get one or two offer letters, okay? But you cannot take that serious, like personally, because it's not you. You know that if you were able to go through our rigorous program at Sabio and graduate as an alumni, that you are more than capable and you have the skill set to land a job in the field as a developer. And so, with that being said, remember why you joined Sabio or joined any boot camp, right? Or transitioned out of your current industry to the tech industry. Remember that why. Is it because of your family? It could be just, you want to live a life where you can actually, make a living and be able to save and buy a house or whatever your dream is, right? Being in the tech industry is a great industry to be in because it's lucrative. Things are just continuously growing, and like the pay. I mean, like, depending on how long you've been in the field or how quickly you can jump or learn new skills, I mean, that's going to play a big role of how quickly you'll, climb that ladder, right? If some people like to call it. And so, with that being said, remember your why, because there's going to be, I always say there's going to be highs and lows. You're going to have some really high weeks where in the program itself, you're going to be like, wow, this is so easy. I got this. I know how to do this. And then you're going to have some low weeks, like when you're job searching and you're like, I'm not getting any traction. This week I have 0 interviews. What's going on? But I promise you, it's just part of the process. And if you remember your why and you stay persistent and you continue doing these top 3 things, then you will find success ultimately, because knowing your why of why you're doing this is going to give you that motivation you need. Knowing your marketing tools, that's going to really help you to stand out as a candidate. And then, being able to continue to hone in on your skills is going to give you that confidence that you need to really excel in each round of the interviews that you go through. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to remember your why because the Sabio's boot camp course is difficult and challenging, but it doesn't end with like, yay, I got a job. Like, you have to do all this work. When I do the interviews with graduates, they tell me like how many thousands of resumes they sent out just to get, a handful of interviews and then to get the job offer, and how much work and how much practice and how much refining goes into it. And so I think it's really important to remember, like, in this process of looking for a job, it's not will you find it's when will you find it, and it takes a lot of work to get to that point where you can get that job, but it is a lot of hard work. And just like you got through the boot camp program, now you can get through the second challenge, and you have the resources of alumni and the career services, all these things that Sabio offers. So, yeah. So, is there any last thing that you want to add before we wrap up the interview?
no, I think like this is a great interview. I'm so excited for, those who are interested in getting into tech, those who are already, in some kind of boot camp or, thinking about Sabio, because honestly, like what you said, Amanda, with our community at Sabio here, we really do care a lot about our alumni, and in particular with our career service team. We have a lot of resources within our career service team, including our partnership with our alumni mentors, who are so amazing. They genuinely care about the people they work with because they themselves have been in the shoes and they know the struggle. They know those highs and those lows. And, they are able to really help mentor our community of alumni who are job searching to get to that point where they feel that confidence and ultimately they do land success. And so, again, remember your why, know your resources, continue honing on your skills, know your marketing tools, and you're going to get there. You're going to get there.
Yeah, this has been so great. I'm so thankful that we were able to overcome all the tech challenges and make this interview happen. So it's been so great. So I'm going to go in the comments afterwards and I'm going to answer some of the questions and add links for resources. But thanks everyone for watching. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I'll keep an eye on them over the next couple days so that I can get all your questions answered. So thank you so much.
Bye.